about 3 elections ago. If you remember, we had a stalemate, and I think the country ran itself probably for about 6, 7, 8 months. And I kind of thought to myself, okay, hang on a second, like, who's driving here? So after a few nail biting months, Enda Kenny got back in, and to be honest, that was the straw for me. I said, right, that's it. I'm never ever voting in this country again. So I actually seen a comment from Chris on Facebook under his wife's profile about deregistration, and that kind of set me on the route. But I will say something. Had I not have kind of went and educated myself on the reason why you need to deregister, that's the really crucial part. And I really hope your listeners don't just deregister without doing that, because if I didn't do that, you'd have some silver-tongued TD like Michael McNamara with his lovely mane of hair would come along then, and he'd probably convince me to re-register. But the fact that I know how the state works, the fact that I know we don't have accountability from our leaders, the fact that I know we lost a Bill of Human Rights, I would rather die than sign up to that constitution again, because it is a slave document. So that is where I started on my journey, and I'm still on a journey. I still have loads to learn, but like, it is about self-education.
Okay. And Chris, how did you get involved in this? Can you unmute yourself there, Chris?
Yeah, it's Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael that actually led me to the subject in the first place, and really it was a no-brainer to make the decision once you compare the two contracts. You know, you compare the 22 with the 37. It's a no-brainer. Like, one is just much better than the other. You know, so I also I have first-hand experience of having no success in defending myself in the courts in this country, even using state documentation as evidence that should have vindicated me in a particular case. So I realized there's nothing in it for me, really, in this state. You can't win. And
okay, so for both of you, it seemed to be you're just disappointed with the system, your own experiences of the system, and looking at what was happening at a national level. Would it be correct in that overall general assessment?
Yeah, that's where it started. But as you learn how the state works and how your vote gets you absolutely nothing in this country, nothing. And when you look at scandal after scandal, that there's no punishment for the people that are responsible, you have to think to yourself, there's something not right here. There's something enabling this corruption at every state level. They can't keep getting away with it. So the more you learn, you know, when you see it, you can't unsee it. So that's, yeah, you've got to learn how the state works, how it operates, and what your vote is getting you, really, before you deregister.
So we'll talk about the deregistration process in a minute, but in terms of focusing in maybe on the 1922 Constitution and the attractive features of the 1922 Constitution compared to the 1937 Constitution that we're under now. Maybe, Chris, could you maybe throw out a few attractive features that we don't have at the moment?
Yeah. They're well, it's your Bill of Absolute Rights is major, because your rights under the de facto, as I call it, the devil era contract, your rights are fundamental. Claire Daly mentioned that you have fundamental rights in the speech she did in the European Parliament just there. Fundamental rights are not absolute rights. They're legal rights, and they're revocable if deemed to be in the interest of the state. So technically you have no rights. So you get your Bill of Absolute Rights back, so you have your non-revocable rights back. You get your power of referendum, which, you know, is kind of essential if you want to consider yourself to be a republic in any shape or form. And you also get the opportunity to recall rogue politicians for failing or just refusing to uphold their mandates. So those guys are sackable with no pension if they don't do their job. So that to me is quite attractive. Those three things are the majorly attractive things to me.
Okay, so the right to recall, referendum, and a Bill of Rights.
Absolute non-revocable rights. Your rights at the moment are fundamental, so they're revocable. Not much good.
Okay, so Are you saying that under the 1922 Constitution, I can go out and smack somebody over the head with a hammer, and my
Absolutely
right
not.
not
No,
to
no,
be
no.
arrested?
That's ridiculous. That's breaking the law. The law is you do not hurt, harm, or injure another man. You've created subject matter damage there. You've definitely broken the law.
So,
And
so
but the fact of the matter is, if you're a politician or if you're a guard or anybody else that does that, the law applies to everybody equally.
yeah. So the under the 1922 Constitution, laws can be enacted that can revoke your rights under certain circumstances, where depending on your actions.
But well, the politicians, the parties, they present themselves to the people who have a position for them, and the position is where the politician works for the people for a wage, and they present their mandate, and if they don't uphold their mandate, well, they're sackable with no pension, and
Yeah.
rightly so.
I just wanted to go back to this idea of irrevocable rights, because
Mm.
I think in all civilizations and under most forms of government, there are circumstances under legislation. So usually you'd see the phrase, even in constitutions, save where otherwise in law. And so,
Yeah,
you'll see something and you say, oh, that's
yeah, that's
absolute.
right. Like basically, yeah, your inalienable rights, for example. You're inalienable, but you have the right to contract. You have the right to not contract.
You see, our rights come with a disclaimer in the
We'll
37.
move over to Sinead there. Go on, Sinead.
Yeah.
Said our rights come with a disclaimer in the 37th. There's that common good thread that runs through it. And like it's just such a fluid thing. Who actually decides what the common good is? You have rights unless it interferes with the common good. But the people don't get to decide what the common good is. So who gets to decide what the common good is? That disclaimer wasn't in the 22. Shouldn't be in the 37. It's too subjective. It's too fluid. It changes. Common good this week is different. Might be different next week. So that should never have been allowed pass. And it's just down to the people who were poorly educated. When this was foisted on them, it was coerced on them by the church. And if you look at the results of it, it went through on 56% majority, but there was more spoiled votes than there was yes and no votes put together. So what the hell does that tell you? They hadn't a clue what they were voting for. They didn't know what they were giving up. And it's not fair that from that day till this, we're suffering as a result.
Okay. And tell me, what are the major selling features of the 1922 Constitution?
Well, I'd echo what Chris said. You need to have accountability. You cannot have a fair leadership without accountability. I have a job. I need to know that if I do something wrong in my job, there will be consequences. They don't have that. So, of course, they're not going to do the job to the best of their ability. I wouldn't do the job to the best of my ability. So, we need accountability. We need enforceable rights. We need our natural resources back because we had them in public hands in the 22. There's no such thing as private Irish water. But De Valera set it up for our minerals to be privatised. We lost so much. He said he was just going to take out all the references to the crown, but I think they took out something like 30 different articles. So it wasn't fair. It was coerced on the people. They were guilted into it, and we've been guilted into voting ever since. So
can I be a devil's advocate? Okay, and that's what
of
I
course you
am
can.
being now.
Yeah.
Can you have too much democracy? And what I mean by that is, there was a movie made in the 1970s, and Peter Cook was one of the main characters, and the other character in it was wearing a bowler hat in it. He was Captain Manwaring in Dad's Army years ago, and Peter Cook, and it opened up this movie. So it was called The Rise of Michael Rimmer, and this movie opened up in this dusty old marketing company, Victorian style marketing company in London. Everybody's wearing bowler hats, and the manager of the place is the Captain Mannering from can't remember his name, from Dad's Army. And in comes this young man wearing a 1970s nice cut suit. It was Peter Cook, and he went into every office and he said, "I am your new PR director," or whatever it was. And nobody questioned him, and he just came off the street. But within a few months, he had turned it into one of the biggest PR and polling companies in Britain. And made a big name for himself in polling, but then he turned it into a political party. And he had people out in the street protesting, direct democracy now. We want more democracy. Give us our democracy. And they got their way. This polling company that became a political party got elected. And on the first day after the elections, a little letter came in your door saying, we want you to vote on some major issue, yes or no. And in the middle of their Coronation Street, there was an interruption because there had to be a discussion on that matter. The next day, there was 2 letters in the door. We have to make a decision on X and Y today. And your TV is going to be interrupted a bit more. Within 3 weeks, there was portfolios of documents arriving at every citizen's door to decide on every matter, from our relationship with Mongolian pig farmers to our policy on nutrition in the gardens of the Phoenix Park, whatever the case might be. And eventually there were people out in the streets protesting, no more democracy, no more democracy. Is there a danger of too much democracy where people get sick of it? I'll put that out to whoever wants to take that.
I don't mind. Chris, do you want to answer that one, or I don't mind?
Are you on mute there, Chris?
Yeah, you hear me now?
Yeah, go on ahead.
Yeah, Finbar, I just like to offer another film as an argument against your example, and the movie I'll use is a much more famous example than your own, and it's The Lord of the Rings. And if you remember that there was nobody that could not be corrupted by the absolute power that the ring would give. Even Gandalf, he was the guy, like, you know, if he can't wear this ring, nobody can wear it. So what I'm saying to you is the same thing in this scenario, that the people are giving their power to a handful of, well, rogues, really, aren't they? They seem to be anyway. You know, the caliber of people that come for the job, I mean, they don't seem to have any morals, if you ask me, and they definitely have no shame. So,
but my worry is that, for instance, when we were speaking to Claire Daly on Venezuela before Christmas, she was an independent election observer at the elections in Venezuela. She was saying that because there was so much democracy now in Venezuela since the Bolivarian Revolution, quite often you might only get 30% of people out voting because they've had to vote on things, 3 or 4 things this year.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring you to an example closer to home for you. There's a country called Switzerland that has citizens-initiated referendum now. This system that we're talking about here, they've had it for over 800 years. They've got Protestants and Catholics living side by side. They've never had a war there in over 800 years that they've had the system. They had a referendum recently. Well, when I say recently, you know, I'm talking maybe a year or 2 ago, whatever it was. They had a referendum on whether they should raise taxes, and the people voted yes, they should raise taxes. Now, to me, that's the sign of a country that works.